Hello, everyone, and welcome. Poor timing, I guess, on the slides to kick off the recording, so I do take a moment, give an actual start for our video editors. All right, hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the 217th governance service call here at MakerDAO. My name is Peyton. I go by Pros11 online, and I am one of the governance facilitators here. I'm joined by a bunch of awesome people that care about, contribute, or are otherwise entwined with the Maker protocol. And this is our weekly meeting where we go over items that are happening in governance, as well as kind of existential risks to the protocol. We do have an exciting show for you guys. Some ground rules, I guess, to go over first, just to make sure we have a good time. As always, let's try to avoid talking over each other. Bad for people present, bad for the recording. If you notice you're speaking over someone, just take a pause and we'll sort it out after. If you can and you're comfortable with it, we encourage you to put those cameras on. It's always nice to see all the wonderful people we have in the community here. Likewise, you can make use of Zoom's features. We have reactions. One in particular is very helpful to me is the raised hand feature. So under reactions, if you'd like to add to the conversation, kind of get in next on the speakers list, go ahead and throw your hand up. I'll be more than happy to call on you. And kind of going along with that, the first time at least that you talk, if you could introduce yourself, that makes it easier for people that may not know you, as well as people watching later. Cool. I think that pretty much covers it. This is an open meeting, so if you have questions, comments, concerns, please bring them up. We generally like to get input from everyone here. Just DBAA and we'll get along great. Awesome. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a bit of an agenda to get through. Starting as usual with the votes, what's going on in the land of maker improvement proposals, and some forum updates. This week, we do have quite a lot of initiative updates. We'll be doing a Q&A with the TechOps core unit, hearing from CES, Collateral Engineering Services team, an update on what's been going on and kind of how they're transitioning. We'll also be hearing about ETHGathering conference that many maker people attended in Barcelona recently, how it went and what the takeaways were. And then finally, our big discussion topic today is existential exposure and mitigation. So we'll be talking about some of the big risks to Maker protocol, what we can do to make those a little better, and hearing some opinions, I guess, on the current state of the Maker protocol. All right, that is enough mumbling for now. Let's go over the votes. We're getting down to the wire governance-wise, which means we have some busy times here. We only had 3 weekly polls that concluded. All 3 of them had an item that passed. First up was the DAI savings rate adjustment. And our voters did go ahead and approve an increase to 1% over the 0.01% it is at presently. We had some parameter recommendations from the Open Markets Committee. Those are quite extensive. Recommend reading through them. And then a poll on if a few of the core units should take on some of the risk and legal work to look at the new silver debt sale. In executive land, you might notice we don't have an executive up yet. We're planning to have that tomorrow, as well as next week's on a delayed date. So both of these execs will be going up on Friday is our plan. They are quite extensive. That is, again, because we're planning to not have any more executives after that one next week on the 9th for the calendar year. So we have a lot of stuff we're attempting to squeeze in there. Execs should return kind of pretty much regular schedule next year. We are talking about trying to get a more consistent every other week pattern out there. So that's something to keep in mind, but nothing further on that at the moment. All right. Looks like I'm stealing Artem's thunder a little bit again, as usual. Sorry about that, Artem. I believe we have a MIPS update in between though. First, do I have one of our MIPS editors?
Yes, I'm here. This is Gala. I think next slide, maybe. Yeah. Awesome. Hello, everyone. So I'm here to give Gala, MIP editor, one of the MIP editors from GovAlpha, to give the update on MIPS this week. So the ratification polls for November's governance cycle closed on Monday. We had 13 proposals on chain for 2 weeks. So let's take a look at the results. Out of the top the 4 top-level MIPs, CoinShares and Origin's proposals did not pass. The 2 proposals from Monetalis passed. Despite this fact, though, MIP 89, Monetalis Arrow Andalusian, has been withdrawn by its author. So since Alan Peterson represents one of the 3 parties other than MakerDAO involved in the workings of this MIP, it has been rendered non-executable and has been marked as withdrawn. Next, we've had 6 core unit budget submissions. The DAX new base reduced budget was approved. Immunify Security, GovComs, and TechOps core units budgets were rejected. Likewise, the SideStream auction services budget was rejected. And the approved Speedy Operations platform budget from SES was approved, passed. Finally, for the mandate update for Immunify Security, the facilitator onboarding for said core unit, and the raising of the emulated surplus buffer upper limit proposal, all of them failed to pass. So next, let's move forward to the proposals in RFC. There's many of them, so please bear with me. As usual, we are working on discussing the most active proposals, but you can always take a look at the category RFC in the forum for the complete list. So we have MIP 91 introduces the concept of a defender contract against governance attacks. MIP 90, which onboards a real-world asset vault to acquire USDC and then purchase structured credit and money market funds. Then we have a number of sub-proposals that remove MIP 14, a generic mechanism to transfer DAI out of the protocol, remove the calendar exception that skips December as a governance cycle, fund the creation of a DeFi-focused language data set for risk modeling. This proposal is going through some revision right now before it is ready to enter a weekly cycle. We have proposals to onboard CES core unit, to onboard Nicolas Lolique as a new facilitator for SES, and to remove MIP 23 and MIP 28, both related to the deprecated domain framework. And finally, fresh from this last week, the one special purpose fund request for 209,000 DAI to support strategic finance core units expanded mandate related to real world assets, specifically in commercial risk and legal domain work. We also have an amendment to amend interim facilitator appointment process, and one top-level MIP, MIP 92, to onboard PSM USDC to yearn to earn yield. So this is it for the proposals in RFC. As a reminder, there is no governance cycle in December. So new proposals, yeah, we are in the next slide, but it's not a big deal. It's just the important dates. Yeah, so December the 7th, that's the date for new proposals to be posted in order to be eligible for the next monthly cycle in January. Thank you very much.
Much appreciated, Gala. Had some love for the photos on the chat as well, so worth calling that out. That should take us to our forum update. Artem, I pass the mic over to you.
No mic needed. Just click on the link.
Even better.
Hey everyone, hope everyone's having a good day, and welcome to the forum recap. I'll be covering the week of November 24th to the 30th, and we have a couple of updates, a MIP, and a few discussions, but keep in mind that what you see here isn't everything that's happened on the forum. There's more. For this video section, I'm just trying to cover the most critical or the most controversial topics, But without further ado, let's begin with our announcements. Starting with the Protocol Engineering Core Unit and StarkNet that announced that they are moving the mainnet deployments for the following two executives, which would be the executive of this week, November 30th, which is moved to tomorrow, Friday, December 2nd, and also the following executive, which was supposed to be on December 7th, it's being moved to Friday, December 9th. Now, both executive votes for this and the following week will take place on Friday rather than the regular Wednesday. And this is to just ensure that these final executive votes for the year of 2022 can be safely deployed. And after that, it is holiday season. Next up, we're all pleased to announce that 𝘱𝘀𝘀 has been selected to serve as interim facilitator of the Collateral Engineering Services Core Unit. And he happily accepts this position and states that he will focus on the following immediate actions, which are to re-enable and stabilize CES resources and its contributors, to obtain a clear understanding of work requirements, timeline, and their deliverables, as well as to begin planning for the future state of CES resources, and to define the interim facilitator timeline itself. And finally, to reconfigure the CES multisigs, which I believe he has already done to a degree and included into the thread as a post reply. But yeah, congratulations, 𝘱𝘀𝘀, and hopefully everything works out. Next up, we have a quick announcement by David stating that the Ren BTC A vault type is being offboarded. An executive vote on Friday, December 9th or later will trigger the final parameter adjustments to complete the offboarding process. And now moving on to our MIP proposal by Along for Wisdom, which contains a series of amendments addressing two primary issues with the current interim facilitator process. And we've just seen this happen, so this is very timely. And the two primary issues that Long addresses is, one, a lack of timely resolution, because the fallback process that kicks in when the initial process fails takes at least 1 week. And that 1 week gives us enough time for any potential major issues to arise. And the second primary issue is the lack of flexibility. So governance facilitators are not currently able to modify processes under atypical circumstances, and that reduces the flexibility of what governance facilitators can do during the interim facilitator process. There's of course a lot more in this MIP, so check it out. But moving on to our discussion sections now. First up, another one by Long, who presents in this post a voting system that combines positional voting with the approval voting system that's currently in place in our governance, and so that individual voters can express their preferences more accurately. And the system can be used to identify work priorities, as well as in the end game to prioritize work on the scopes within DVC and within MetaDAOs. And with the system, GovAlpha hopes to promote consensus building and to reduce polarization in governance. And our final discussion by 𝘱𝘂𝘶, which calls for basically like an overall discussion talk on existential exposure. And he asks, when does a bad asset exposure become existentially bad, and how would we mitigate it? And he does present his own opinions and thoughts on this question, as well as the discussion kept going on in the thread. So it's pretty interesting. I definitely recommend checking it out. And with that, that's it from me, at least for the forum recap. We do have some more forum posts on the Forum at a Glance thread, such as more updates, more discussions, initiatives going on, proposals, and if you want to check out this video recording, it's also available on our Forum Recap YouTube playlist, which is in the official MakerDAO YouTube channel. But with that, thank you and take care.
Right on. Appreciate the video essay as always, Arden. And we'll get back to the slides here. All right, awesome. I think that'll bring us to initiative updates. For today, I think we are starting with TechOps, who might be sharing a screen. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I will be sharing my screen if possible.
Looks like, David, you're going to have to make Dimitri co-host. Excellent, thank you. All right, and you should be able to share.
Yeah, I think. Oh. Can you see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Yeah, so the reason for TechOps presenting today, actually we were planning to do it last week, but due to the holidays, the last week's call was canceled, so we decided to do it today. And yeah, as you all know, we submit a budget proposal a couple of weeks ago, and it was rejected, right? So, and during the voting phase, we got a lot of feedback and questions from multiple actors asking about what is actually TechOps core unit doing and what's our goals for the future. So we decided to do this presentation to share information about our core unit. Yeah, so if I may start with the team. So we are currently, we are two facilitators, myself and Simon. We have, and who are also engineers. We have 5 engineers and 1 project manager in the team. So yeah, you can see the avatars. These are Discord avatars here. So we are distributed globally. So we have people based in Asia, APAC region, in Europe, and Americas region. And that has always been a goal, because we are doing 24/7 support and monitoring for the protocol services. So we are always aimed for this global coverage. And yeah, all the team members hired were based on these regions and priorities that we have, right? So we have, yeah, 2 people in APAC, 4 in Europe, and right now it's 2 in Americas region. You can see highlighted regions here, but we do 24/7 support, so all time zones and all holidays, all the weekends, everything is covered by us. Yeah, so what is TechOps core unit mandate? So we started the core unit with this goal that we provide critical infrastructure maintenance and provide technical support for all MakerDAO stakeholders that are core units, community members, regular users of the protocol, and yeah, all other stakeholders that might benefit from us. And yeah, so what we've been doing is like providing technical support and yeah, connecting users with the protocol members and the core units. So we've been delivering infrastructure and support in an automated way that benefits to the all ecosystem actors. So what does it mean? So I have actually, we made a picture of work distribution. It's not kind of 100% like it doesn't show exact distribution, but it shows the main responsibilities that a TechOps core unit has. So the main thing we are responsible for is technical infrastructure. We are developing keepers and doing monitoring of the protocol. We are supporting blockchain nodes and maintaining them. We are doing alerting and notifications based on predefined rules. We have analytics dashboards that displays ecosystem health, and we are doing security checks and security maintenance of the project. And besides that, we are also helping with the operations, like managing accounts, different tools, and services for various sectors. So this is kind of an approximate list of the things that we are responsible for and that what we are doing right now. I want to cover in details the biggest part of this work that we are doing, and just to show what is it exactly that we mean by that. So infrastructure, this is the biggest part that we are working with, so infrastructure basically represents the hardware, software, and service components that are created for running different processes. And an example would, this infrastructure, it's very critical for multiple processes, and it requires deployment, maintenance, and monitoring that we are doing. Examples of these infrastructure pieces is like, you all know MakerDAO forum. So it runs on the server and it needs to be maintained, deployed, and supported by us. So Oracle feeds, relayers, nodes, MakerDAO chain lock, and all these services that are kind of critical for the MakerDAO protocol. So we are responsible for all the infrastructure behind them. Right. Keepers and monitoring. Keepers, what is keepers? It's we call it a software that monitors different blockchain events and alerts us or ecosystem actors on some predefined rules. And monitoring, this is also what we do. And it's like watching on-chain events, on-chain or off-chain parameters events, various tools, services for the behavior that is not desired. So there are a few examples that I put here, like imagine like a huge vault liquidations coming in. So we are monitoring for these kind of events, and it alerts us on whenever that happens, and we can prepare some or announce it to the interested parties about this coming. So the same for collateral price deviations or market changes, Oracle transactions that are pending, scheduled executive spells. We are helping with the process of verifying that only valid executive spells are executed and non-valid are not cannot be executed. Various governance events like voting and everything around governance. We are monitoring all the events around that, large MKR transfers between MKR holders. So we are also keeping an eye on this event. So these are a few examples of the monitoring that we are doing. Right. Blockchain nodes is also a big part of what we support and what we do. Like spinning up nodes, maintaining and upgrading blockchain nodes. Recently we started a project that we want to provide endpoints for the nodes to have like 100% uptime, independent on how the big load is, because some nodes are very heavy and yeah, have a huge load. So we are also working on that. Yeah, alerts and notifications is also something that we configure and we provide to the ecosystem actors, and these are two examples of what we do and how the alerts look. So we have different kind of alerts based on priorities and services that are being monitored. So whenever we receive alerts, it's, as I said, we have like 24/7 support that we are providing. So we are reacting on these alerts and yeah, fixing whatever we can fix, and also involve core unit members or whoever, whatever team is responsible for specific service that is failing. So we are kind of connecting the nodes together. Yeah, so these are a few examples of alerts and notifications that we have configured for our team and also for various core units. Right. Yeah, analytics dashboard. So we have created yeah, the dashboards that display various blockchain events or various services that we monitor, and in case of some deviations or any problematic scenarios, then we are immediately alerted based on yeah, predefined rules that we configure here. So this is one of the dashboards showing how we monitor different events, and yeah, we have multiple dashboards for nodes for various blockchain events that we monitor. And yeah, we aim to make them open source so that anyone can basically access and view them. Right, and yeah, this is the system health dashboard that we created. It displays various, yeah, it's a public page. You can see the URL here, and it's, yeah, anyone can access and see it. It is connected to the monitoring that we have in place, so it's integrated fully, and whenever there are problems with one of the services, so this system health dashboard is updated automatically. And you can see live status of various events and description. If there are any troubles, you can see like what is happening. We are also putting live updates here, so you can have a look and use it if you want. Right, so what's the plan now? We are going into 2023, so we plan to transition to endgame during the year, and yeah, but the main goals are like continuing providing technical support and infrastructure related services to the DAO, and yeah, enhance monitoring and automation of existing services. And yeah, the goal is to, because we have some legacy infrastructure that comes back from the foundation days. We are supporting it, but the plan for 2023 is to move it over to different core units and ecosystem actors who should actually be responsible for it, of course, with our help. And yeah, the final goal is to further decentralize of all the infrastructure that is currently in place. We want to secure and have a backup cloud provider, alternative cloud provider that is being used, so that we are kind of more secure. Yeah, as we speak about Endgame, the goal for TechOps service for TechOps core unit is to become a global ecosystem actor, and by that we mean that we will be transitioning into being a service provider for various core units, and that's what we already started doing, but it will be more kind of it will be structured in a better way than it is now, and yeah, we'll be serving all core units and all the DAO based on these agreements that we'll have. Yeah, so these are actually the main things I wanted to share about TechOps. Yeah, we have our Discord server in case there are any questions and people want to reach out to us. I know there were like couple of people trying to connect on Discord. I usually encourage people to send a public message somewhere that they are willing to connect before actually connecting, because there is a lot of spam on Discord and we are ignoring it. And yeah, there is a forum category for TechOps, and please have a look. We have our new budget proposal submission coming soon, this week or early next week. So yeah, please have a look, and if there are any comments and feedback about that, let us know. And yeah, so myself and Simon are facilitators, and yeah, in case of questions, reach out to us.
Awesome. Appreciate the overview there. Do we have any questions? TechOps?
Yeah, I'll kick things off here. It's Frank, 3F delegate. So the notifications that you send out to large vault holders that are getting liquidated, is that something that's done? Can you kind of describe how it's done? Is it just done via crypto Twitter? Because if I recall, and a good example you might give us some color on was 7 siblings, the vaults were getting liquidated, going back maybe 6 months, 3 months. And just kind of walk me through how you notified them, or is it just, again, automated via crypto Twitter? And the second part is that dashboard, the monitoring dashboard that you showed there, is that a public dashboard? Is it just a private dashboard for internally for the team to use it as a monitoring tool? And it seems like it overlaps with other dashboards that are already live. So kind of give us some color to both of those things, if that's possible. Thank you.
Yeah, so answering your first question about how we notify, how we are watching this event. So we have keepers. These are like small programs that are watching these events. And in case there are big liquidations coming that are above threshold that is configured, let's say like 10 million or 20 million DAI, then we have alerting configured, so it's all automated. So we and all the core units that need to be involved, they are getting notifications about that, and then we are kind of watching closely when it's coming. Right, so I hope this answers your question. So everything is automated, and but yeah, we are always trying to enhance it and improve it and get any keeper requests from the core units and community to cover all these critical scenarios that might happen. Yeah, so this is the first question. About second question, the dashboards, if you are talking about analytics dashboards, they are right now private, and they are visible to us and other core units that need them, because there are various things that are relevant to specific core units. The plan is to make them public because we want everybody to see them. So we are working on that, on kind of open sourcing them and yeah, giving access to everybody. There are public parts, like I showed you, the health dashboard. This is already public, and you can see from the various issues that happen on different systems. we might want to expand it and include more services. We have core unit facilitators added to our internal alerting system. So whenever they want, they can see various incidents that happen and that are triggered. We also configure for facilitators or whoever, like stakeholders that need to get these kind of alerts and be notified about these issues. They are also getting them. And we are always trying to ask people if there are any relevant actors that need to have access to various systems, to dashboards, or whatever system is needed. We are trying to ask and add people, give access to whatever information they need. But we are also working on publishing some of the events. I think we already do about, we already send some messages, or not we, but the system sends some messages to MakerDAO Discord. There is a bot feeds channel where we send some events, for example, flash loans. If there are like funds, a lot of MKR available at flash loan providers. So we send a public message saying, please, we need to secure the head, right? The voting on the governance portal. So this is public, and we are adding some other messages as well. So if you think that some information needs to be public, let us know, and we are very willing to share it with everybody.
Got it. Thanks for sharing that up. And one thing that some of the delegates were kind of questioning was the ability for other core unit teams to run their own backend. And one of them is obviously the Maker Forum and the Discord. Can you kind of tell us why you believe it would be more important, more efficient for someone like TechOps to run the Maker Forum as opposed to another core unit? And I'll leave it at that. Thanks for answering my questions.
Thank you for asking. We believe this is a task for TechOps, or at least we think we can do it more efficient because we have experience with that. We have some best practice infrastructure, for example, infrastructure deployment code that is reused across multiple projects, and that we can kind of run faster, create faster, doing updates faster. And so because we have experience with multiple projects that actually is doing the same. So let's say like creating a server for forum, doing backups, updates, increasing capacity of the server. So we are doing that a lot, and the forum is just one small part of it, right? And we think we can do it more efficient, or in a very efficient way, and that's why we can do it faster and better. Let's say it like this. Of course, like anyone can do this, probably like other teams or internally can do this, but as I said, we believe that it's better that we keep it internally in the TechOps core unit because, as I said, we have a lot of experience and trained engineers that is constantly doing these things and improving things. I hope that answers the question.
I'll let David go next.
Hey, Dmitry. Thanks for taking questions. So one common accusation, I guess, against TechOps that I see in the forums and that I've heard from people is that you guys are double dipping in the sense that you guys get paid a budget, but then you also charge core units for various services. How would you respond to like an accusation and kind of those kinds of comments?
These are not accusations because we admit that we charge some core units for the services that we provide them, and there is a reason behind that. Because basically the base rule is that all core units get our services for free. Like the basic setup, we are providing everyone for free. Some core units, they have some specific requirements or some heavy technical tasks that we are doing for them that cannot be considered as a work done for the DAO protocol because of some specifics. And we are doing that work separately, and we are charging for it. Another example would be some custom integrations that some core unit need. This is also something specific to each core unit and or to some core units that want it, and this cannot be considered like a work done for the DAO protocol. The thing is that this work is done outside of the mandate that we've been hired for. And the work is done completely separate. It's tracked separate, so it in no way kind of interferes, or it cannot be considered as like a double paid by the protocol and by the core unit. So in no way. As I said, it's due to some specifics of the work and some specific requirements made by the core unit. But I hope this answers the question.
Also appreciate the questions there. Noting some comments in chat, see from Derek, the protocol engineering facilitator, kind of mentioning a bunch of stuff that TechOps does for them with their keepers. Any other comments or questions we want to have?
I think just to add on to that, Pros, I mean, we don't receive any or pay any additional fund to TechOps for all of this work. This is all part of core work. The way we operate mostly is we'll do the original work for the keepers. So the Flush keepers is a good example. We'll build that. We then hand it over. They manage it and run the infrastructure going forward. That's not something that we have the I mean, I'm sure we could do it, but it would take away from the core tasks that we do, which is on the smart contract side. So this is really handing it over to over the fence to them to maintain and take forward. So so far, that's been a good working relationship and has worked well. So yeah, thanks Ďimitrů and team.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
I got you, Santiago, if you just want to go.
I can jump in here if I can. Simon here, co-facilitator with Ďimitrů. So going back to Frank's question regarding running the forum, why wouldn't other core units do it? We actually support this, and we can transition to this model going forward as we transition to the end game. But one advantage of our team is that it's global. So with the recent forum issues that we've seen, this is an issue that needs constant troubleshooting. So I was looking into it yesterday during my day. Then as I go into bed, someone else picks it up in another time zone. So this is the great advantage of, you know, global team, where we can constantly keep on working. And yeah, so we can, as Ďimitrů said before, we can slowly offboard the services and help other core units run their own services and transition more into kind of a support model for other core units to not hog all infrastructure. But yeah, we need to figure this out.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Looks like I need better glasses. I just wanted to comment on something that I saw a lot of delegates and people mentioning. It was this thing that I've also even seen it outside of the DAO in some previous jobs. The comment was this: a lot of the work that TechOps is doing could be managed by the particular core units themselves. So the comments were, maybe these guys that are working on Web 2 stuff or front end or whatever could also be managing their own infrastructure. And the answer is, yeah, maybe they could, but have these people talked to every single worker of these core units? Are they willing to actually take on that huge load and burden of having to research which infrastructure they need, how to manage it, actually maintain it, support it? Maybe they start doing it, but trust me, morale is going to go down because they are going to have a lot of work in their hands. I've seen that happening. And eventually they are going to have to request a bigger budget to hire more people. And it's like, yeah, again, maybe they could do that, but it's not a good, I don't think that it's a good thing to have developers focusing on infrastructure, in the same reason that I don't think that it's good to have infrastructure people focusing on development stuff. It's IT is a huge space and you can be an expert in absolutely everything.
Some appreciate the perspective there, Santiago. Go for it, Frank.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think some of the concerns from the delegates, including 3F delegate, the platform I represent, was that the budget ask was, a bit steep for the pivot that the MakerDAO community is going to be pushing forward, right? Which is the endgame plan. So with that in mind, and maybe it's a question for Simon, like how in tune are you with the endgame plan? There's going to be some core units are going to either members or teams are either going to pivot as clusters of the endgame or perhaps ecosystem actors. And how do you plan on using that information for your new budget ask, which is coming in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, so we're keeping a pretty close eye on endgame. At the moment, we're positioning ourselves as the ecosystem actor before we figure out how to proceed further. And if anything, us having this contractual relationships with some of the core units, this kind of puts us in a good position to proceed. So, the team is still there, has to support the infrastructure. The infrastructure is still there. So we do need the budget to sustain us until we figure out how we're actually going to fit in into the end game. Yes, it was our failure to recognize the state of the DAO, the willingness of the DAO to move quick to the pre-game in 2023. So the new revised budget will reflect this. And I think we're in a good position to, support the DAO with this transition.
All right, looking forward to that. And, to also bring back a point that Santiago made, that it's not easy task to take on a lot of this work you guys perform. We did get a lot of feedback from folks that we reached out to in core units who did say that, there would be a lot of fires that would need to be put out if you guys were not available. So we did take that into consideration. 3F delegate, I can speak for my platform. Not sure how, I'm pretty sure the other delegates might have done the same thing, but Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys coming on, and I think all the delegates, you know, are willing to meet with you guys too if you want to do an office hours where we can kind of go over the budget and kind of talk things out. Any MKR token owners are welcome as well, right? This is a DAO, so looking forward to that.
Thanks, Ray.
Awesome. Well, in the interest of time, I might scoot us along. If you have one more thing you want to add, Simon, feel free.
Yeah, so the revised budget is coming. The major additions were, as we said, is the end game. Again, lower budget. As I said, we've kind of failed to judge community sentiment for the cost cutting, so we acknowledge that now, and have given the voters multiple options as per MIP 40. So that is happening. So yeah, please have a look. It should be posted in the next couple of days.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to come on this call. We do have a few other topics to get to today, so I'll go ahead and scoot us along. I believe next up is the CES team update. Do I have Retro, the interim facilitator, here to give that?
Yes, sir.
Awesome, take it away.
Well, hello everyone. Like Artem summarized in the forum recap, been mainly approaching this with a 5-point plan. If you want to move to the next slide. I was first informed by GovAlpha early Sunday the potential outcome of the vote. So I sent messages to each of the individual team members who schedule one-on-one meetings to first focus on what do they need operationally, what do they need personally, and then address any compensation issues that may have come up during the potential terminations that occurred. The team is stable. We've retained all the talent except for Nikolai, who's stated he's taking a bit of a leave of absence for personal reasons. That hasn't caused concern amongst the developers, and the timeline for producing the deliverables that were required of the team look to be on track. We'll get on to that on the next slide. But hopping over to point 3 quickly then, in the forum post for the interim facilitator, I have updated what actions we've taken and are requesting to change. So the operational wallet has been reconfigured with myself, Juan, and David from CES as the signers with a 2 out of 3 quorum. The auditor wallet has then been requested to meet the same configuration of the SES teams, permanent teams wallet, which would have the accounting team from SES, the audit team from GovAlpha, as the 2 signers for the auditing wallet, each nested multi-sigs with a 2 out of 2 quorum required to transfer funds to the operational wallet. I'm also conducting a review of the expenses and payouts that were completed during the frantic week a couple of weeks ago, just to make sure that all the transactions are accounted for. And that then will position us for a better understanding of what the future state of CES looks like. Currently, like I said, we're a 6-person team. Not including myself as the interim facilitator. My goal as the interim facilitator is to really enable the team to map out their own future within Endgame, and there seems to be some consensus amongst the group that will continue to develop over the next couple of weeks, and we'll definitely update the DAO with once we have a clear vision and picture of what that looks like. If we could hop over to the next slide real quick, just to provide some details of the operational work that we're taking on. Again, the December 7th, but now 9th spell is on track with the onboardings and offboardings listed. There's also a deliverable along the same timeline for the Gemini rewards that looks to be completed around the 5th or start of next week. And then moving into the future, there's a variety of assessments and implementations that the team is tasked with that, again, we feel confident moving forward with. A big part of assuming this smoothness of operations was the CES team proactively went out and got the resources that were required to allow their operations to continue even before an interim facilitator was appointed. So I do just want to call that out. as the team's proactive nature. And at the bottom right-hand corner, if there's any questions, comments, or concerns that you'd like to have addressed individually, that is the two best ways to get a hold of me.
Appreciate the overview, Retro. Likewise, do we have any questions for Retro or the rest of CS?
Yeah, Retro, thanks for stepping up and becoming the facilitator of this team here. The MIP 81, I might have missed this one. I apologize for that. So is SES and you still looking to do some kind of smart contract here, or that's out of the, that's no longer in play? Are you caught up on that? If not, maybe somebody else can chime in.
Yeah, if anyone from CES, David, if you'd like to go ahead and take this, please feel free.
Yeah. So the last discussions we had with Coinbase, they came back with a condition on the smart contract solution that effectively they wanted the ability to deny a request to withdraw funds from the smart contract. And so we had a discussion with PE and SF about that, and it kind of presents a lot of complexity, and is like to do it by smart contract that way. The only advantage we get is reducing our counterparty exposure, because while they could still deny, say, a governance request to withdraw funds for regulatory or other reasons, it still does allow us to sort of send funds electronically without sending it direct to sort of a real world counterparty. So hopefully next week we'll be publishing our technical assessment. And then I think strategic finance really has to decide, and with PE as well, whether it makes sense given the incentives being proposed, and they were just revised yesterday, to proceed with the smart contract solution, which likely will require an audit and will require input from PE as well. So that's where we sit currently. The plan is to produce the technical assessment for both the smart contract and non-smart contract options, and to highlight the difference between the two. And hopefully with strategic finance and growth, we can decide, or the token holders can decide which way they want to go.
Got it, thanks. And on the non-technical side of things, I mean, it's really, I don't really see much of an assessment. Is that right, from CES? So if you could correct me there, since the MIP wasn't written as a technical MIP?
So the MIP had two requirements, I think, an opinion from, if I recall correctly, from strategic finance on the real world counterparty part of it, and a technical assessment on the technical implementation. And really the choice is between a MIP 65 structure, in which case SF will have to find a counterparty that they're comfortable with from an exposure perspective, or the smart contract solution, which will still need a counterparty in the real world to sign an agreement with Coinbase. But as I said, it reduces the need to sort of flow money externally to real world counterparties, because we can do it through the smart contract. I hope that answers your question, Frankie. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Understood. Appreciate it.
To then answer Tim's question about the interim facilitator term, the MIP states and recommends a 2-month period, which coincides well with some of the early assessments of how it could provide value in the near term, both stabilizing as well as preparing the team for the future state. We'll hope to have a more concrete timeline towards the end of December of whether the interim role is providing value, or if it's better to transition to a different leader at that time. think it's also fair to note that CES is funded through about April 1st, and that will afford the team a timeline then to prepare for the proper transition to an endgame ready team. So a lot of that is still being discussed. We're about 4 days in, so apologies for not a more concrete answer, but at this point in time, I would assume a 2-month period is the minimum.
It looks like you're still meeting expectations for clarity, so I appreciate you transparency there, Retro. Any other questions for Retro or CES? We do have a discussion topic to get to, but we've got maybe a couple more minutes we can spend here.
I'll take this moment to give Peyton another hard time about confirming his auditorship in the forums, but besides that, appreciate everyone and happy to answer any other questions one-on-one.
Right on, will do, Retro. And yeah, thanks for making the time here. Awesome. We in fact do have even another initiative update. I believe Tadeo is here to talk to us about ETHGathering. Tadeo.
Yes, hello.
How'd it
Hey.
go?
Wait, I think I've put my camera now, I hope. Yeah, no, quick update on my side. For anyone that don't know, my name is Tadeo. I'm the current facilitator for the Data Insights core unit. If you can go to the next slide, I wanted to present, basically 2 weeks ago, we had a conference in Barcelona that I helped organize. It was quite successful. We had 300 attendees, including partners from our own very ecosystem like Oasis, Superfluid, Nexo, and some others. We had also a great presence from Maker. We had between panel discussions, workshops, and keynote talks. We pretty much, I think, covered the main areas that we are developing. So on the governance side of the design and we made a particular highlight of the delegate system. We also had a panel discussion on real assets, security concerns, liquidity optimization, and we also had keynote talks from Jan from the risk team and also from Pavel from the Oracles team. And I want to make an important highlight. Dennis from Docs organized a workshop about Endgame. You can see pictures there on the right-hand side. If we go to the next slide, we're going to have let's say, the asset that we end up building. This was particularly useful for quite a few people to basically kind of start understanding a bit more the current, let's say, the current developments of Endgame and how things are progressing and how things will fit in the future. I think create a really good space to have these discussions. So yeah, no, thanks everyone that attended and also supported the conference.
Awesome, and seeing a shout out to Frank for the recording of the workshop. That was pretty cool. I got to participate in that and appreciate the update today. Do you have maybe a couple minutes if there are questions about ETHGathering or some of the workshop output?
I like Shrupi's comment of redoing this in November. I think it'll be a good point, and we should have quite a bit more new information and new developments to actually be able to work through any topics that might not be fully fledged out by then.
Definitely love to see that as well. Very excellent. Well, in the interest of time, I will scoot us along, but we do appreciate you being here for this as well today, and really awesome conference you put on.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
That'll take us into our discussion segment. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, we're going to be talking about existential exposure and mitigation to it. I believe we have Sam 𝘱𝘂𝘶 lined up to give us a little talk about, I guess, the framing of this problem.
Actually, it seems like that might not be the case.
I'm here. Do you want me to go over it?
Awesome. Yeah,
Oh,
take it away,
cool. I
Sam.
didn't see you there, Sam. Sorry.
Yeah, we could just go off my quote too, I guess. No, so this is, I guess, this came up just thinking now that we have real world assets in excess of the surplus buffer. Previously, we only had one USDC. Oh, we had Paxos for a while too, I guess. But now we have Gemini USD and we have 𝘊𝘂. So all of these real world assets are above the surplus buffer. And like we seem to have just picked 500 million as the next number up. I'm not sure how we arrived at that. Round numbers are nice, I guess, but I think it's important that we understand like how much is too much. Is 500 million and we take a 1-0 loss on that. Can we survive that? And have we done everything necessary to prepare for that? I'm not saying I think this is likely to happen, but you know, we should be building the system such that it's maximally resilient against these sort of intermediate losses. Now, something that's obviously an existential exposure would be the USDC. If we got blacklisted or whatever, you know, it's game over. I don't think Maker could survive that. But I do think we could actually survive a loss of about this size of 500 million. And there's examples of this in the ecosystem, like Frax routinely is under collateralized by 10 to 20%. I think it's like 5 to 10% right now. And MIM actually has 10% in bad debt that they just have sitting on their books, and it's apparently fine. Now, I'm not suggesting we strive for this, but if there was sort of a bad scenario, I would like to plan for this recovery mode. If we can recover from it, we should put the processes in place to figure out where this limit is. And if this bad scenario happens where we take a 1-0 loss of 500 million or something like that, 10%, what is our recovery mode? And we should define what that is and enter into it to either we just go with the default right now, which is to mint a bunch of Maker, which I personally think is suboptimal. Potentially, we could recapitalize ourselves by a number of methods. We could be comfortable with having slight under collateralization for a couple months. We could drop expenses to skeleton crew only and then pile all revenue into filling this hole. We could issue debt. So there's any number of options here. And I just don't think we've thought about it enough. And in particular, I would like to find this threshold where the exposure to any single risk switches from being really bad to becoming existential. Like where I feel like it's somewhere between the exposures that we have on GUSD, Paxos USD, and 𝘊𝘂, where it's above the surplus buffer, but it's definitely needs to be below what the USDC exposure is. There's some number, and obviously we won't be able to get an exact number for this, but I think as a community, we should arrive at some number. Maybe it's 10% of outstanding supply, something like that, where we say beyond this, the risk, if we take a 1-0 loss on this asset, it's an existential exposure and we are comfortable moving beyond that. Otherwise, I don't want to just be picking random numbers that feel nice, like 500 million. I guess the other piece of this, I don't know if you guys wanted to touch on this, is yeah, part of the strategy was looking at the PSM's redemption curve, which is the most naive implementation of this, just because we wanted to get it done quickly. It redeems 1-to-1 for DAI no matter what, and that's probably not good, especially if we do, like, let's go through an actual scenario, because I think this helps. So let's imagine one of the real world assets just goes bust and we don't have an Oracle price for it on chain. So basically people would just hear there's a hole in Maker's books. Now, if you're a DAI holder and you hear this and you understand you don't have guaranteed redemption for $1, but you do have this through the PSM, people are potentially going to flood out of the PSM, and we may actually exacerbate the bank run by having this 1-to-1 offering, because those who go quickly, they'll get $1. Those say it's a 10% hole in the books. If there's 90% of it exits, these aren't exact numbers, but 90% of the people exit and then it drops to 0 redemption, right? So those 10% people get $0 in redemption. This is super bad because we're encouraging a bank run in this situation. We're encouraging people to panic exit. What you usually want is if you want to have disincentives for panicking. So you allow people to panic at some market price, but you penalize them for doing it. And this will like naturally find a market price for DAI as opposed to this very discontinuous drop to 0. So that's one of the things I think we should think about with the PSMs in particular.
Definitely some good stuff to reflect on there, Sam. Obviously, we're touching a lot of subjects here. We got about 15 minutes of time, so I do want to try to cover as much ground as we can, question and comment-wise. Yeah, and I do see a hand from one of our recognized delegates. Raphael, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. So I think regarding RWA exposure, I think Paper Imperium touched upon it on the forums, and I have been giving that a lot of thought, is that apparently our current reporting on the state of debt is quite complicated. So I think one thing that's necessary is to just level up in that regard. Like how do you see that? Or like what's your impression about like how confident are you about RWA monitoring?
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment. I think CS could probably better answer our current monitoring for that. But for me, I view this as like we should be striving for better. Like right now, we do get a market price discovery on things like USDP and GUSD, so we can kind of see when there's a market panic there. But something like the 𝘰𝘳𝘳𝘯𝘢 deal, this would propagate. We have nothing on chain to determine whether this is there or not. So it would presumably populate through rumors and stuff like that. And this is, this is kind of how this bank run thing works right now. It's a first step, and I get like we're paving a new path, so it's not perfect. But I would think to strive for more of these things to push this data on chain as much as possible, so we can get more robust systems online. But maybe CS should comment on the reporting, or it's SF, or whoever's doing that.
Give those groups a moment in case they want to organize to respond. In the meantime, I do see a hand from BMC.
Hey, bros, this is Brian. So I just want to go ahead here and say that the original plan for the maker system was for maker holders to take losses in the system. So generally, you know, it's the system should be risk managed to be able to cover any losses, and if not, to be able to cover them with maker sales. So taking a $500 million hit, or a 500 million DAI hit right now, looks like we're taking maybe 10%, putting like a 10% hole in the DAI value. So for starters, we can't cover that with the surplus buffer. So the next step would be to sell maker to recover that loss. There's all sorts of secondary effects that start coming from that, because as soon as there's a crisis of confidence in the DAI backing, all of our traditional vault holders will leave. The PSMs will quickly drain, and the hole that we had that was, say 10% right now, quickly becomes something much larger. We could end up with that hole being a 60% proportion of the DAI backing. So now, DAI is really only backed by 40% of the collateral that we say it is. That ends up taking the risk off of maker holders and putting it on DAI holders. So I mean, for lack of a better term, in crypto we call that a rug pull. Like I think, in the last few months we've seen the failures of FTX and BlockFi and Celsius, and I can go on, and it just takes one of these secondary counterparties of ours to fail, and we should just assume that they will. So, to bounce off what Sam's saying, like we need a plan for this, because this is not sustainable, and we're essentially gambling on some of these things and hoping that if it does fail, we'll just make it back on the next hand. And that's not the system that I signed up for. That's not the system that the white paper describes. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that haven't really thought the second order effects of taking such large risks with DAI backing. And that's about it. That's about all I want to say there. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point. So I think there's two things here, and maybe we want to stick with the just the regular setup we have now for recapitalizing the system. But the other piece is about the PSMs, and I think that piece is more important to address. And yeah, I think your points are valid, Brian, about there is a threshold where we're rugging DAI holders, right? So maybe just sticking with the original design, and maybe just having a longer period of recapitalizing with the maker. We leave it as is or whatever. But the PSMs, we probably want to be careful with the exacerbating a bank run situation if this hole appears. And the interesting thing, if we have a redemption curve, actually, it will work to recapitalize the system by transferring money from those who are panic exiting to those who are still confident in the system. So there's a lot of interesting game theory here.
And noting the time here, I guess we do have a few more minutes. I know within game plan, right, a big portion of this is the idea that MKR will no longer be the backstop. So I don't know if anyone's on the call might want to talk about protector DAOs and kind of how the plan is to absorb their reward exposure. That might be helpful for some on the call. It looks like I volunteered myself. You can obviously read about this more in the forums, and I'm sure we'll have some more in-depth calls on it as well. But one kind of interesting aspect, I guess, of in-game plan is this idea that all real-world asset lending will be done through protector MetaDAOs, and those protector MetaDAOs have to basically be constantly accumulating a first loss, a junior position, if you will. So that's kind of one way in game plan looks to kind of address these looming existential crises is, okay, well, how about the people that are directly responsible for the deals have to put a revenue stream up for taking on first losses. So that's certainly an idea, and kind of mimics what we did with the surplus buffer to a certain extent, right? Let's take some of our revenue, divert it into a buffer, and rather than minting MKR, we'll take it from there first.
So would you say, as an example, and this is a question for you, Payne, sorry about that. You might not have the answer, but as an example, say the Viridian cluster, who is responsible for, who is managing the MIP65 on behalf of the DAO, they would pretty much shift that MIP65 to their cluster and eventually MetaDAO. And if something went wrong in MIP65, that first hit, should be covered by that MetaDAO, and the core shouldn't be affected. Is that what you're saying? The MKR token owner shouldn't be affected? Or perhaps to a small extent?
Yeah, I mean, with how intertwined the tokens are, right? Like, and depending on the size of the lawsuit, I guess I would expect MKR to still be affected, but rather than in the current system where it's basically directly affected, right? Like we start market selling MKR, or even worse than market selling it to cover our losses. And in this position, it would be the kind of the MetaDAO's surplus buffer that's taking the first hit, potentially a lot of that going into their own token as well, before it gets to affect the MKR. And yeah, Adrian pointing out in comments that it also really depends on the source of the catalyst, right? Like if it's something like a large government cracking down on crypto, that could affect a lot wider area than if a individual loan pool is not performing.
Right. So I guess a lot of the risk mitigation should come from, someone on the either in the DAO or in the end game when in the meta DAO ecosystem where they're kind of gauging the risk factors of something like the 4 PSMs. Some folks will argue that, as an example, and this is just not my belief, but I'll say it, that some folks might think that there is no risk or it's very low probability of USDC, rug pulling, but who knows, right? So I guess we do need that risk mitigation, and we just don't have it in place. And how confident are you, in your opinion, of maybe getting the structure with the scopes, the frameworks to possibly have this in place?
Yeah, I mean, that stuff's all coming, right? Like basically the idea is the scopes will define what's allowed. So that's based on the rules for play. And then it'll be kind of up to the MetaDAOs themselves to say, all right, well, within these rules, like what is an acceptable risk to take on. So there's definitely going to be a lot more coming out about the practicalities of that. I think Rune's call last night was centering around his draft for the real world asset scope. So we'll definitely be starting to get these things sooner and sooner. It's just a question of how much they'll kind of define things for us and how much we'll still need to explore. And I do note a hand from Just In Case, another one of our recognized delegates. If you want to take it away, Justin.
Thank you, Peyton. I just want to address the issue that was up sort of before we moved into the end game portion of it. And I think it's absolutely correct that the MKR holders are the one who should bear the risk of this failing, and also they should bear the upside. I think this is also why it's really important that we ensure that the MKR token carries value and that it increases in value, so we are able to bear more risk on the token itself. And I also think it bears reminding that we need to grow the surplus buffer to have more leeway to take on bad debt. The trouble is we're in a situation where we sort of have to take on some extra risk because we're in a negative profit kind of scenario, or maybe not exactly at this moment if you start counting in for all the ROEAs, but in any case, we need to actually grow the surplus buffer, and to do that, we are unfortunately in a position where we are forced to take on maybe more risk than we would be happy to do. So all those things are connected, I think, and that means in a lot of the initiatives that are going on right now, where we're trying to reduce our expenses as well as increase our revenue, are pulling us in the right direction, and then we need to see what we can to minimize the risks, especially the existential risk. And to me, that means essentially any loss in excess of the surplus buffer, because that moves that essentially puts in a situation where the DAI holders takes the cut unless we can make up that shortfall with MKR tokens, and we can't do that unless we actually maintain a certain value on the MKR tokens.
Appreciate it, Justin. See some World Cup points in the chat, and noting that we are coming up on our time limit here. And perhaps a good place to start winding this down.
Yeah.
Obviously, go for it.
Could I go just like one last thing? I think as a next step, we should maybe as a concrete next step, come up with this number. What is existential exposure? And I don't think we should just say, okay, it's higher than the surplus buffer. I think it's important to actually determine what this number is, because $1 greater than the surplus buffer is not existential exposure. I think we can agree on that. So there is like some number that's somewhat sizably higher than the surplus buffer that we agree maker will endure, potentially with some people taking a haircut or maker holders having to eat some inflation. But just having that, coming at that number, I think is important because we have very real assets on our balance sheet that are in excess of the surplus buffer, and not differentiating between 500 million in exposure and 5 billion in exposure, I think is a mistake.
Okay, I'll just jump in here to give you an answer to this, Sam. I think that number, it's hard to make a static number because at least if the MKR holders are going to take this, then that is totally dependent on what the current valuation of the MKR token is, right? And what is the risk tolerance of anyone who wants to buy into the MKR tokens. But I do agree that we should probably have some, rough bands on where we see this. So we can put a red line that is somewhere in excess of the surplus buffer, but yeah, for risk evaluation purposes.
And then I think with MKR as a backstop, I think we haven't really explored the dynamics of what will happen if we have to backstop massive amounts, let's say 8-digit amounts with MKR. I mean, what would that do to the MKR price, right? Not just because of confidence, but just the sell pressure. So I think the MKR backstop has a limit that's much lower than the current market cap, and I think we probably need to think about how much lower it even is. And yes, BMC, totally agree with your point that the MKR price drops long before we even start selling it for as a backstop.
Awesome. Well, seeing some debate about yields and kind of what are good target rates. So we kind of encourage everyone to take that conversation to the forums, right? Obviously this existential risk is a big topic, one that we should pay attention to, and can probably learn a lot from some dialogue, especially bringing together different points of view on risk tolerance. So really appreciate those of you that were present with us today to talk about this. And as well to those of you that are watching this later. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Take a look at the Make It Public events calendar to catch up on other public calls we do. And yeah, we'll keep the chat going. Talk to everyone soon. Bye.